Well, all right. Let's see. Let's give it a second here. Make sure that it's like as Batman as the show used to say, batteries to power, turbines to speed. You guys remember that one? All right.
Yes.
Looks like folks, we're live. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the security rabbit hole to another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. And in the interest of expanding the universe of what us InfoSec folks care about, here's a topic we have never covered before in almost 600 episodes. So I've got some cool guests, folks you guys should probably know. We're going to talk about the topic of food safety. Now, I understand that is a universe of large topics. We're going to try to break this down as in orderly fashion as possible, but know that we're all ADD kittens, so we may go follow this around, and we'll see where we end up. All right, without further ado, let me do some intros. We're going to go. I'm so bad at this. We're going to go my left and then that way. So, Kristin, you're first.
You pointed the wrong way, but that's okay.
On my screen, you're right here.
Okay, I'm on your left, so it's all right. I'm Kristin Demoranville. I am the CEO and founder of Anzen Sage, a cybersecurity resilience consulting firm that's focused directly on the food industry, and that is all aspects. Again, big daunting industry. I've been in technology for 25 years. I have worked through food production and manufacturing through most of my career. And it's been an absolute pleasure really digging into the food professional networks and getting to know these people that sustain us and feed us. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, that's a worthy cause. So good to have you. Next, over your left shoulder, as everybody else is viewing it, is Mr. Nelson. Introduce yourself, buddy.
Hey, hi. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Nelson Estrada. I have been in the agribusiness for more than 10 years, on IT for almost 28 years. Um, I'm the IT director of Wood Farms. We sell products. We sell tomatoes, strawberries, raspberries. We have presence in 3 countries. We were one of the first to implement robotics in California. You can see our operations in Oxnard, Santa Maria, and we have a lot of offices in Mexico. We are right now Colombia.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so I'm going to start here. I'm gonna start with a question. I don't know where this is going to go, but let's figure it out. The most basic question I can think of is, what in the world does the food industry have to do with cyber? Where do we fit in? Kristin, start.
Sure. Everything within the food industry, for the most part, is either automated or digitalized. I can't even speak now. And that's why cybersecurity is important. Not to mention, too, the amount of data that's being collected from consumers, what habits, what they enjoy, what they don't like, marketing in general. I know there's some privacy people that are probably listening to this. High privacy. You will be involved in this at some point if you are not already. It is so important that we keep the systems that surround the food, whether it's food that's being made or food that's being harvested, safe at all times. So all of the food professionals are out there that in food protection, they're actually using more digital technology than you realize. The food industry as a whole is completely automated in a lot of ways and innovative and constantly growing and changing. I mean, look at the farming industry. We've gone from plow that was pushed by a human to a horse to a cow to now these automated tractors that are connected via IoT, and they can sit on their own and do their own thing as long as they're programmed properly. So I think as cybersecurity professionals, we really need to start taking a serious look at this as much as we do with oil and gas and other critical infrastructure sectors, transportation, hospitals, things like that. Because of that sensitive nature of food, Nelson's company literally collects and harvests and cleans and makes sure everything's sanitary, and then it will go onto our dinner plates. And I, for one, as a cybersecurity professional, especially within the OT ICS space, already felt this need of, we're saving lives. We have to do this because it's critical. But now it's a whole other level of, this is really about sustaining life, and cybersecurity is really coming alongside these professionals to do their job to the absolute highest quality they can and keep people safe.
Nelson, I'm sure you've got plenty to add to that. Talk to me from the producer perspective. Where do you see things fitting in?
Yes, I mean, I'm agree with everything she said. I mean, we have been using technology since the beginning of this business. For example, right now, AI is like a big gimmick, a big marketing gimmick for sell you everything. I mean, farmers have been using this for years. Why? Because there is a lot of data, there is a lot of information to correlate, and AI is great for that. But again, we have been using this for years. Um, as we are prone to use technology a lot right now. As you said, we have distractors that they are not like in the path, this mechanical stuff like you want to set the clutch and you want to go to the farm right now. It's not like that. There is like a push of a button. You have the farmer inside. Sometimes he's with the cell phone on Facebook or something. The tractor is almost doing everything. You just need the guy to make sure you are in the right field. Um, and because of that, we are prone to being hacked. We are prone to things not going right because technology is like that. It's a great ally, but if you don't use it correctly, it's your worst enemy.
Mhm.
Okay.
We have this issue with technology. Oh, sorry about it. That we don't have that many experts, unfortunately, on technology. So I'm glad, Kristin, you are an advocate for us because we need people. We need someone to hear us. Like, okay, look this because we are important. I mean, we are the food. We are in the food supply chain. So if there is something like an attack or something like the Ukrainian war, that's the first thing they want to attack. We saw a incredible rise of attacks on most farmers. People we know they got hacked, ransomware, and everything began with that because we are the food. We feed the country.
Mhm.
Okay, so I've got a good point to next jump off of. Let's think about it this way from the perspective of expertise, right? This is an industry. When I think of food production, I think farmers in the field. You don't necessarily, and this is not to be derogatory. It's just like let's call what stereotypes are, right? You
Mhm.
just think of folks that are out there in Middle America somewhere or globally. You don't think of this as a high tech. Typically, you don't think of this as a high tech venture, right? You know, you're not expecting robotics and AI and lots of electronics. You're expecting lots of manual labor, soil, water, seeds, sunshine, as a friend once called it. And so I'm guessing there's not a lot of cyber. Let me take a step back. I'm guessing there's probably not a ton of IT expertise in the field, much less cyber. Nelson, do you see a lot of cyber expertise in your industry?
Unfortunately, no. Why? Because we don't have the big budgets. We don't have the big support from the farmer. Why? Because they can invest a lot of money on things they see like a tractor or fertilizer, stuff like that. But investing on software for them is very difficult to understand. Okay, they invest on this AI because they saw the benefit. They invest on this, but investing on cybersecurity, that's a challenge we have right now. We have a challenge training the users. For example, in the office, I can use biometric for all my users, and it works great. But when I try to use biometrics on the field, it just doesn't work. Why? Because the user call me, oh, your then computer doesn't recognize me, and when I call him, show me why. I mean, the guy has the sunglasses, the hat, the facial cover because he's working under the sun, so it
Mhm.
doesn't work. So you need to
Ah,
be flexible in there. But I mean, he needs to work, but you need to take care about security.
so Kristen, I know you want to jump in, but I got one more, kind of a follow up. So we can separate out those that work in quote the field and those that work in the back office in the corporate offices. Uh, is it fair to say that in the food industry, maybe Kristen, this one's for you as well, whichever one of you guys want to tackle this or both, in the food industry, on the production side, um, is the corporate back office catching up or at least reasonably up to date? And it's just that the field side is behind, or is it like the whole industry is back?
Uh, I'll go first, Nelson. I know you have something to say about this. First of all, I would like to comment that it's adorable that you think that there isn't a lot of automation and AI and technology in the food industry. You've been marketed so well, sir, that you probably think there's dairy cows in a red barn and everybody's happy.
I want to believe in
It's
dairy
not
cows
like
in a red
that.
barn.
It is, I mean, there are farms that are like that, obviously. There are small farms that still do that, but on a big production level to feed people, no way. There's no way they could sustain that. So I love that you said that because it made me laugh because I was just like, wow, that's just we've got more things to break if that's how we're really viewing it. And
Well,
that's
stereotypes, right?
no, it's good to know that that's how people see it. Like that's a challenge for us to overcome, obviously. Um, I think the way, and I took a deep breath because I'm remembering stories, and and I was like, well, how much can I actually say? I think that these organizations that run large food companies, and I've worked in several of them. Nelson, I know you're nodding. You're going to start nodding when I say this. I think a lot of times the corporate offices forget that they are a food producer. I think they get caught in their departments, their finance, their accounting, their receivables, their, various IT, HR. I think they kind of get stuck in this sense because enterprise IT and security are easier. They are easier. Like, let's just be honest about it. You don't have to think outside the box. You don't have to think about the guy who's wearing the sunglasses and the hat when he has to do biometric scanning of his eyes. You don't have to think about that kind of stuff. Everything kind of rotates easily. It's traditional security, if you will.
Right.
So the enterprise side isn't behind. It hasn't adapted to what's needed for the field or for the production environment. This is why people in process is always going to trump IT controls, because people will undo the process that you've put in place, or IT controls will break the process that people need to get production done. Because if it doesn't support production uptime and employee safety, it's gone. They don't care. They will throw the person out. It doesn't matter because you're affecting the bottom line. I once had an executive in a very high position in a company I won't name out loud, pull me into a meeting one day and ask me why I care so much about the factories. And I kind of looked at her funny and I said, well, the factories make us money. Of course I care about them. That's where I should put my efforts in as a technology person. And she said, well, why don't you care about the corporate office? I said, last time I checked, you guys are just burning money. So I don't really think that I should be putting more effort into a place that's not bringing value, and where our paychecks come from, where the value is. And I'll never forget that, because that disdain look from that C-suite executive just did not understand, hadn't spent any time on the floor, any time with the product, any time with seasonal employees, any time with the operators, anybody who was actually close to anything that mattered, and had this high opinion that we should be focusing fully on corporate. And I feel like, unfortunately, sometimes that sticks inside of some of these organizations because everybody gets flustered when the C-suite rolls through or the CEO comes by, or even if the CEO comes into one of these factories that it's producing food, they'll put the red carpet tour out for them, which slows down production, potentially endangering people safely. It's a lot of these things. So it has to be a different mindset. So it's not so much that behind the times, it's a different mindset that has to be presented for these industrial spaces.
Nelson, thoughts?
Yes, correct. Um, and we have this thing that all depends on the risk appetite of the company. For example, we have these humongous devices with SCADA industry control systems that they are legacy systems. They are outdated, but you need to take care of them because they are important. For example, we have this humongous silo with the ammonia mix for the whole season, and the system is already made the measure, but you need to do an update. And why? Because there is danger when you bring this to the C-suite, to the owners. Okay, we have this issue. We need to update this. This means we need to reset the machine. But resetting the machine there is the risk that you won't have the right measure. Something's gonna change. You can assure that because it will reset, do the measure again, and you need to be very careful because a little movement in there is not accurate. It means a word for the industry. So you say the owner, okay, if we don't update this, you are gonna lose this kind of money. You do the math, And he said, okay, if I don't do it, I will lose this because I already did the mix. And they decide, okay, I prefer losing this money than the other if I'm attacked or if I suffer, because that's not for sure. So they
Yeah, yeah.
receive and they accept that risk. So it depends of them.
Mm.
Um, yes, I mean, we have everything. We have people that they love technology and they want to invest, but usually there are a lot of owners. There is like a community in there. Some others prefer the old ways, and okay, I prefer it to invest when I can see it, or when it can give me back um, revenue. Because if I don't see it, for me, it's an expense. So we need to change that mindset, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Kristen, your example there of the factory, or sorry, of the warehouse slash factory versus the corporate office is perfect. I think that goes for that goes for not just gosh, not just for food for industry, but like for everything, right?
Yeah,
We
it's
need to
for
start focusing as an industry. We do a lot of and I've been a party to this because so I know what this is like. We've spent a ton of time focusing on the front office, the corporate people, all that, and look, that's important. I'm not saying it's not, but where the bigger risk, and Nelson, you pointed this out, where the bigger potential risk is on the production lines and in the harvesting and the planting and in the refinement and whatever in the packaging and all that stuff, because you can ruin an entire truckload of crop by being off by a half an inch or something, right? An update fails, a machine is down. I've actually seen this at I toured a bottle making plant not too long ago, so semi related packaging, but it was an update to a PLC that ran a particular machine that did a thing that put labels on bottles,
Mm.
and something happened where there was a corruption, something corrupted, right? And so it took them a couple of hours to figure it out. But in the meantime, like the reason they knew it was broken is because it was sticking the labels just like on the wrong part of the, like it was wrong. And you look at it and go, what? That's not good. And so now you've wrecked a bunch of product, a bunch of stickers, a bunch of glass. You're like, well, this is pretty far-ranging implications. And like Nelson, you said, they look at hackers and they go, yeah, kind of, maybe I've seen it on the news, but who's going to come over and
Yeah.
hack my bottle maker or my label attaching machine? Like, who really cares about the machine that cleans and cleans up strawberries and sticks them into a little plastic bin? Versus, I'm not a bank, nobody's going to try to hack us, but the risks are there. I like that explanation.
I think people they only want to focus on the good things. They assume good nature. Obviously, different cultures around the world. Japanese, for example, is very trusting and expects people to do the right thing. I do think people believe in the goodness of others. So that's part of the reason why they don't think that's going to happen, because
That's fair.
why would anybody attack my food plant? Who cares about my food plant? But if there were brand competition, sabotage is real. We've got plenty of movies and books about that. I mean,
Yeah.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, hello.
Yes.
If we talk about the fact that if a nation state wanted to take down another country, the first thing they go after is water and food. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to scare people. I think people think that I'm about this conspiracy, and I'm not. I've already seen examples of this. We know this is happening already. It's increasing every year. The government put out a warning about it in the US. I believe it's also been warned in EU as well. So, I mean, like, I know that people think it can't happen till it happens, which is sad. And I don't want people to live in fear, but we have to just be aware. We have to be aware of the risk at all times. It's like crossing the road, right, without a light. You're going to take that inherent risk running across the street in major traffic over 5 lanes of traffic. You need to make the decision when you're going to move and when you're going to stop. Most of the time, if you're going to stop, you're probably not going to make it. But if you run, you're going to probably be all right. Same kind of idea. If you choose to patch your system in production, that's going to happen. If you run the patch in a virtual environment and see if it's going to break it, that's probably better, right? This is the problem with security inside these environments, is the patching is a real problem. Nelson said legacy systems. Yeah, we all know about them. I'm an advocate for segmentating, like just segment them out and deal with them, keep an eye on them. They're your crown jewels. these machines can't be upgraded or even have the software upgrade without spending millions, if not close to billions, unfortunately. So you have to make a risk, plan around that, and also accept that risk. So people need to start thinking a little bit differently rather than the traditional, like, we're on our computer and it's so happy and we're talking to each other like this. Yay, technology security. It's not, it's so much more than that. It's about people potentially losing a limb. It's about the food system being totally corrupted by whatever, because they mixed too much nitrous, whatever, into whatever chemical and sprayed it. It's crazy.
So let me ask you guys, because you guys are both kind of in the right spot to answer this question. And Nelson, maybe I'll start with you. Where is the biggest adoption of technology that we as cybersecurity professionals should be looking at in your industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, when the owners or the people investing, they see the benefit right away, that's where they want to invest because they see the revenue. Coming back to my previous talk, if they don't see it, it's very difficult. So they invest a lot, for example, in security, where they can see it because I show them, okay, this camera, you don't need to enter the password, it's very secure. If you lose the password, sometimes they don't even know the password because, which is very complex password. But if they have the face, okay, you just sit in here, smile, and you are in, you're working. So they invest in that. But other stuff, like in the other layers, they don't see like investing on Mimecast or other stuff or other protection for emails. They are like, I'm not that sure. I mean, you just told us that we will be fine with antivirus. So they don't see we need other layers too. So it's always a challenge.
What about outside the corporate stuff though? Like where in the like when you look at your entire organization, right, from the field all the way to the corporate office, where is, I would say past the corporate office, not counting your corporate space, where is the biggest investment you think is in technology? I'm not saying necessarily security, but in technology, where is it being put? Is it in like is the whole thing, is everybody talking about AI? Please tell me it's not just AI in your field right now, because
no, actually it's real-time information. They love that. They need that. For example, now they need, or sometimes to be compliant, they need to know where is the fruit since the field until the customers. They need to know the temperature. They need to know where is the truck. So all that information they invest because one is needed, and they love to see this dashboard with all the real-time information. On that, yes, they are investing. 5G was a great thing for us because we didn't have a internet service provider locally. We were working blind, but right now with 5G, with the Starlink, all these options, now we can have that. And so that they want to invest. The other is robotics, because they saw the benefit. And there is a misconception between the people. Okay, this robot is gonna take my job. Not right now, maybe eventually in the future. Right now it's way too expensive. As I mentioned, we have robotics working right now in the field. And for example, when the robot is out at the beginning, when the robot was out, have you seen the unfortunate picture of the last rhino of the planet when he's hanging around with 3-4 soldiers with AK-47? Picture the same in the farmer, because these machines are so expensive and they were afraid that the farmer will damage them. So the first time you took the machines, there was always like always the supervisor looking, okay, don't touch it, don't move, don't do anything. Right now,
it's so long. That's the best thing I've heard in so long. The visual, that is great.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, right now, I mean, that's you can see the robot in there working by itself, because right now you learn and you have all these safety measures, because we run on their OSHA. When the robot is running, I mean, nobody should be on the field. If not, they won't run the robot. So that we are changing, we are learning. But yeah, they invest a lot of that, because sometimes the worker, they don't see this. They are not able to do the job. Why? Because the perfect time for pick up the fruit maybe is going to be Sunday, 3:45 in the morning. So people won't do that. Yeah, exactly. And or it's raining and you need to pick up because that's the perfect time. So robots come handy in here. But again, not right now because this is super expensive equipment. So
Yeah.
they can be saved for maybe several years, but eventually, I mean, they feel like they're gonna take the jobs.
Yeah. Hey, one
Unfortunately,
more follow up to that, because you mentioned 5G and Starlink and all that, and that's interesting because when I'm thinking, like as you were talking, my brain is conjuring images of fields, with fruit and vegetables and grain and all sorts of things. And I stopped myself for a second and I went, hold on, those are always the places where I drive through where I have no signal on my cell phone.
that's
So
right.
like all this automation you're talking about, this real-time information, weather, transportation, field communications, soil temperatures, whatever, right? That had to be linked together via probably long range Wi-Fi or now 5G or something like that. But like those are typically the places where we don't have a lot of communication, right?
That's correct. I mean, you have fields far away because the soil is great in there, but there are not even electrical power. There is no even houses in there. There is no coverage. So you need to figure out, I mean, what's the option? Satellite, or maybe you mount, as you said, long range Wi-Fi on the nearest town. Sometimes you need to do that, but you need to bring communication in there. Why? Because, for example, the fruit we collect is packed on the field. So you need the system
Okay.
in there. You need printing labels. You need to measure. You need
Oh
to
man.
That's very important because, for example, if there is a recall, you need to know exactly what field and
What
the
time,
exact
what field?
location,
Yeah.
exact everything. Yes,
Oh
because you need to
man.
go back, and that's why it's very important food safety and having all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
information because you need to pinpoint where that strawberry, where that raspberry came.
Traceability is super
Exact
important in
trace.
the food industry.
Thank you, thank you.
No
I was
problem. I'll try
looking.
to fill the
Thank
gaps
you,
in for you.
Is,
thank
is
you.
that
Traceability
what
is
you're
actually
saying?
one of the number one components in the food industry that's everyone's concerned about. In fact, I think they put like a bunch of new executive documents out about it recently as well. Different ways to handle it because it's not like you can exactly tag certain fruits and vegetables. I would love someone to like put a tag on a blueberry. Like that's not going to happen. So they want to be able to find out exactly what lot number, if you will, and what aisle and what plant the contamination started, for example. So that's that kind of traceability. That's how detailed it gets and how granular it gets because they need to know what field, what happened, when was it planted, what did it access, was it water runoff? They need to know these things. It's very intense, and the people who are on that side of the house and the food defense side, they are some of the most amazing people. It is like capes on. It is awesome. Just figuring it out and having cybersecurity come alongside that, especially in not only the culture but in the actual technology they use, is huge for them because they can use some of the products that we use to detect incidents and intruders and other various different types of things, access control, to help them with their investigations. I don't know how many people are actually doing that right now. I've had these conversations. People are like, well, what are you looking at? Maybe we want it. So wouldn't you want to know if somebody walked into a building in an allergen area and then walked to the next one? We can tell you that based on access control, that kind of thing, right? So now we're part of that investigation side of the house, which automatically, really pushes through.
That's interesting. All right. Well, look, I'm gonna. We sort of figured this would happen, but we're getting close to the marker where we usually end the conversation. However, if you're listening live and there's a bunch of you who are, hang out. And if you're listening on a podcast and you're like, wait, the show's over, it's not. I'm gonna break this into part 2 coming up in the following week because this is one of those I'm gonna release in 2 parts. So while you're listening to this on a podcast, stay tuned, more coming. Yeah, so hang out there. But we're going to continue this conversation live. All right, so let's continue this conversation because I think this is important. So I've got a couple of things in the chat here. Najo actually posted to us. There's a Wired U.S. Food Agriculture ISAC for cybersecurity. That's actually a good one. I'll post that in the show notes. I'm sure, Kristin, you guys are aware of the
Please
ISAC
do
there.
definitely publicize that the ISACA IT Ag yeah, that's a good one. Scott's done some amazing work there. So definitely.
And then to start off the second part of this, because this is going to be a good one. So Alvin asks, can you share an example of how a cybersecurity attack against a food supplier might look like step by step? What might the attack be, and how might that ultimately end up impacting the food supply? I'm going to read that and just let you guys go because I have no idea.
I'm going to say that I'm going to answer this super vaguely because I don't want to be held responsible for a hacker coming in and attacking a food production environment.
Fair enough.
I've had reporters ask me that before, so I respect the question and I understand the curiosity, but ultimately it's the same way they infiltrate any other environment, either through an email or through an illicit link. Third parties are a huge concern in the food industry because they have third parties for everything, including, as someone was reminding me yesterday, MSSPs. They have third parties for everything because they can't afford it in-house. So they'll send it out. And think about all of the logistics of the shipping, the trucks, the labor that comes in and out that's seasonal. I knew factories that were pulling in 5,000 workers just seasonally for holidays. And that's a lot of bodies to deal with, right?
There's a lot of people onboard and offboard quickly.
Well, they may not necessarily need access. So determining who needs access. So strong security policies are really important, obviously for lawyers and things as well. But ultimately, these attacks are the same as they are for any other industry, except they're just more devastating when they happen because you might have someone pass loss of life. Obviously, the food supply being completely corrupted and then unfortunately killing children and other people. It's just all these things kind of compile on it. So it feels a lot more daunting than the actual attack is. But most of the time it is ransomware via links and emails or illicit links. Social engineering is a huge one as well. People have wiggled their ways into production areas that shouldn't be in there. You have all kinds of circumventing of access controls. You have people that are getting on the Wi-Fi doing God knows what because they share their password throughout the whole warehouse. And it's something simple like baking 1, 2, 3, I
was concerned that, as you're talking, I'm going to just interrupt you for a second. That's the first thing I thought of is you've got people working in places where they don't necessarily have cell service and they know there's Wi-Fi because, that piece of automation is on Wi-Fi. So there may be a guest Wi-Fi, there may be a worker Wi-Fi, and so people share passwords, people get into networks, and suddenly you find yourself in a position where you've got a God help you kind of a ransomware style thing, right? Where somebody downloads something by accident, clicks on something, and suddenly if you're not well segmented, as you've said, Kristin, the entire production facility line gets halted, it gets corrupted. Front office, back office, all the way out, and people sitting on their hands, fruits and vegetables rotting in the fields, trucks stalled, not knowing where to go, like that kind of thing. That is when I think how to attack, like what's the threat model for something like that. That's where my head goes. Is you don't have to necessarily, like, if you're trying to disrupt, ransomware is still the number one choice of baddies across the globe, right? It's you're not, this is not an industry where I imagine there's like a lot of like super secret things because like you grow strawberries or you grow, okay, maybe I'll let you.
There's a lot of secret stuff. What about like all the favorite food you love? That's all secret recipes.
Okay, fair enough. I was thinking in like farmers in the fields kind of stuff.
I thought Nelson and I were, if we were there, we would both jump.
Yeah, we were like, no, wait. That's right. Because the recipe for Coca-Cola and Twinkies, which I'm pretty sure will survive the nuclear apocalypse, and then all the other things that are the processed things that make us happy and smiling, or even whatever, right? Your orange juice and stuff like that. There's probably secrets for that, but I'm talking kind of more further back end, like when you're out in the fields, like how I imagine growing. I keep coming back to strawberries because I just had strawberries in a smoothie this morning, but like. No, there's okay. You know what? I don't know anything about your industry.
No, you're fine.
There's my ignorance on display.
More of the fruits and the vegetables and the agriculture side, but there are secrets there too. You don't want everybody to know everything about how you laid out your field or how much you're growing. Your yields are very important. Seeds,
fair enough. Super
protected. And
that's true. You've got because now they're like patented or licensed or some weird thing.
There's a lot in that side of the house.
Yeah, maybe we don't unpack that one.
Yeah. No. I want to say something else. For example, the research you do for the breeds, because they are always looking for new breeds, a new breed that
Okay.
works with less water or with less fertilizer, or simply a breed that tastes better because that makes you different from the others. Because we are selling, as you said, tomatoes, strawberries. There is not much you can do for the exact recipe, but if you make them the strawberries sweeter than the others, if you are able to know how to make them sweeter, you put more sugar, natural sugar in there. I mean, that's good for you because that differentiates you from the others and gives you advantage. So we are very jealous about that, about all the research, 10 years of research, 20 years of research, all that data, it goes on Google. I mean, that's very dangerous.
Yeah, you know what? I had completely not thought of that because there is all that research that goes into new breeds, new strains, new ways of making delicious things more delicious. That's a good point.
Don't worry, you are the owner of the podcast. You can edit that. You cut it, and you look great as usual.
You know what?
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
You know
fine.
what? This is why I do these conversations, because I learn like the audience does most of the time, right? Because look, I don't live in this world. I don't think about this stuff. Like I get my knowledge from the news, or sadly from watching movies where they fantasize some of this stuff. You're like, oh yeah, but I've got a couple of people that I know that are actually in like actual farmers, and they're individual, so they're like their world's a lot different than what you guys are talking about. Let me take this in a slight take a slight turn here, and let me ask, when you've got we've seen tractors be hacked many years ago by firmware and all that. We've seen all these IoT devices in the field that can get hacked. Where do you, again, outside the corporate office, where do you apply? Like, what's the best application of cybersecurity in that field? Both metaphorically and literally today, like where's the best bang for the buck?
The best bang for the buck to protect IoT devices in the field, is that the question?
IoT,
I was clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I'm asking, is it IoT? Is it in the communications? Is it in like where does that industry need to spend right now? Is I guess what I'm asking for. Like, what's the thing people should be looking out to put their money towards?
I think if you're going to buy an IoT device in general, you have to understand that it's not secure by design. We've had this conversation too many times in the industry.
Yeah.
Even these products that are, being created for weather and fire and everything else, it's super important. Ultimately, you need to know what you have. And I think sometimes devices get lost, not lost, but somebody who knows it's there, but it hasn't been used in a while, or somebody's left the company or whatever. So asset management is very clearly very strong, something to do that. And then obviously access control. Not everybody needs access to that device. If you have a dashboard system, like Nelson said, which is great, you have a select group of people that have access to that dashboard and that dashboard only, and not directly to the device. So having that being access controlled to a high level is really important. A lot of them, there's a lot of tablets and phones that are used in the field, other little devices that are connected via a phone or a tablet. Those devices, again, have to be secured. It just goes back to basic security hygiene in that regard. There's no magic wand for this. There's no silver bullet. It's just, don't be an idiot. Like, basically, here you go. Like, this is the cool tech we're giving you to do this job, be more amazing and save people's lives and make people healthy. But like, don't be an idiot. And I think Nelson's right. A lot of it comes down to education as well. Do I think the people that are directly in the fields need to necessarily know how to use the IoT devices connected to the weather? No. I just think they need to know the dashboard in order to view it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when we have our phones. I don't care about it. I just want to know what the temperature is outside, via app. And also, I think that they need to understand that the actions that take on those devices that they're viewing this on, whether it's a laptop that can go out to the internet, there's the concern becomes real, because they need to know that whatever you do could affect other things. Keeping that really tight and secure on the dashboard level is hard, because you have so many different things feeding into it. And again, there's some third party being pulled in. So then you have to make sure you have strong security riders, which again, that's daunting. And then there's how do you make them go through an audit? And then audits are boring. Everybody knows this, but it has to continually be done. You have to walk into someone's house and tell them that their drapes are ugly and they need to fix it. Those kind of things need to happen. So there isn't like a magical like shield that goes over the field, if you will. I wish there was, but there is not. So it's just coming down to people like Nelson and myself and others that have to educate people around it, educate people to do the right thing, and also keep people aware. So if you see something wrong, you need to say something. People can't futz with the equipment in the field. Don't go near it. It's not for you. Your job's over there. Leave that alone. It's really cool. That's it. It's like the robots. We need to put like people around the little devices, if you will, to start protecting them. I guess.
Yeah, you nailed it, because you said you need to keep the people aware, and you need to keep the people away, because Microsoft rule, if you can touch it, it's not yours. So you need to secure the physical security, and there is a big important step in there, and common sense too. I mean, you just need to trade them. Okay, this is very important stuff. Don't put the beer on top of this because it's going to damage it. Common sense.
Don't reach your hand into something and accidentally unplug the entire network and the factory goes down. And I know someone's listening who's done that, so I see you.
Hey, Nelson, when you're talking about making investments in the cyberspace, how do you have the conversation? How do you couch it? What are some of the words and examples you use, so that we're not, because in the broader security industry for the last couple of years, we've been pretty diligent about saying, let's get away from the boogeyman is coming. If you don't do this, the whole world will crash. And it turns out people go, oh yeah, well, let's find out. And sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes awful things happen. But how do you have the conversation to make the business case where it's rational, fact-based? So what do you say? What are you saying? What kind of threat modeling are you doing? What's working for you?
Yeah, I mean, scare tactics, as you mentioned it, they don't work as before. I mean, they need to have the information so they can deduce themselves, okay, this could happen and this is bad. But what they like to see is numbers, statistics. Okay, this is happening to your neighbor, the farmer next door. Look, they invested on this product, or they didn't invest on this product. They were out of business for a week, 2 weeks. So the projection is they lost this kind of money. And you do the projection yourself. Okay. Usually at this time of the year, the projection we do this is this. If we are out of business because servers are down, okay, scratch that. Okay. How much money will you lose? Stuff like that. They like to see, again, graphics, numbers. They don't understand the technical part, of course.
Yeah, quantifying the risk is super important, especially for the agricultural side. I mean, it is general for all of food, because their forecasting is really long. They have to purchase items up front in order to even produce, right? So they have to get their palm oil from wherever around the world, or vice versa, any other things. Same with getting seeds. If you're going to do the hybrid, you have to contact a lab and really go through that moment. Yeah, that's a huge thing to say, Nelson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You even have the form. Oh, sorry. You even have the formulas. Have you invited Ira Winkle to your show yet?
I've had Ira a couple times. Yeah.
That guy is amazing. I mean, he explains everything.
Yes.
Everything so well. So I took a lot of advice from him, and it works. He gives advice for the general business. Farmers are tough. So we are in discussion with him to write a book about how to talk to farmers. I mean, we are on the final steps of the book, because that's a challenge. And I'm kidding. No, if you can get Ira Wrinkle, please please invite him. I mean, that guy is amazing.
Yeah. No, I doubt it. But I really do think a book on how to talk to farmers would be pretty awesome. So I mean,
yeah, we need it.
Kristin,
are you free?
About writing books.
We can start it.
Well, we can. I'm already talking about writing a book. So
awesome.
I love it. I absolutely love it. When you guys are done, come back. We'll have it. We'll have an episode called "How to Talk to Farmers," or "Talk Farmer to Me." Listen. So we focus quite a bit on the food production, like from the stuff from the ground. Kristin, you hinted a little bit about this whole notion of like secrets, and we kind of went into the like, oh, well, there's an entire massive industry of these big companies that take they're further up the supply chain. They take things like, hey, strawberries and some corn oil and some sugar cane and some thought and that, and suddenly like one of my favorite foods shows up. Like that Twinkie did not. I keep saying Twinkie. It's my guilty pleasure, you guys. I have like one a year.
I can go there with you. It's okay.
I never buy them because if I did, I'm trying to eat healthy and all that stuff, but I would like eat the case, and it's not a thing. So like you go to the fair, you have a deep fried Twinkie. The inner fat kid in me is happy for a while. Anyway, but when you have these conversations, my brain is like Twinkie.
Have you noticed though, from when you were a child to now, that the Twinkie flavor has changed?
I see. I'm not okay. So I'm not crazy.
It did.
Okay, so
that leads me. Cream changed. It changed.
No.
Company. Yeah. That was like a while ago, actually.
That's why Mountain Dew. That's why the only Mountain Dew buy is like when I see it, I buy that stuff with the real sugar in it, not the Franken sugar. Because I like the good stuff.
I'm sorry for the food industry if you're listening.
What's that?
I said I'm sorry to the food industry if you're listening, Frank and Sugar. You said.
I know I'm awful, but listen, I like the stuff that comes out of a sugar cane.
No, but a lot of people don't know that how much that changes, and if a company loses the ability to, or they sell the company off, they may not buy the form, they might not buy the recipe, the formula with it. The creator of that might feel like, too bad for you, nobody's getting this again. If I have to sell out to you. It is actually that kind of petty in the industry sometimes. A lot of people don't realize.
Why should the food industry be any different? Humans are petty. Why should anybody be any different?
Right? Yeah, humans are humans. It's totally true. I think what people don't understand is some of these packaged products in general, and Nelson, feel free to jump in. They don't actually come from one facility. It's not like your Twinkie comes out of one house. I know, right? Yeah. So the mix, that's the Twinkie mix, will come out of one factory and get shipped to another factory, and then they'll actually create the Twinkie like outside casing. The cream filling comes from another ingredients factory that's shipped in, and then it's brought through.
No, false. That comes from a cow. There's a magical cow that has cream filling.
Okay, we're not going down this road, anyways. So this is a rabbit hole I'm not going down. But however, it's actually, there's so many ingredients that go into it from different factories. They call themselves mother factories, the ones that kind of get fed up into. It's really quite interesting because if you are at one type of factory, you can't easily switch to a different type of factory. You know that factory, like you know what ingredients factory through and through, and that's your life. And then if you switch over to like an actual finished goods factory, that's a bit of different training, and you have to get through that understanding. And then there's the whole frozen component. So the food industry is actually one of the biggest components is freezers, is that whole frozen side of the house. So think frozen trucks, think freezers, deep freezers. Yeah. I've had the privilege of hanging access points up in deep freezers. And let me tell you, I like being cold, but not that cold. And you lose your fingers after a few minutes. However, people don't think about all the logistics of how your food moves. Your food moves way more than you think it does. And there are so many steps where it could go wrong if it elevates in temperature a little bit, if it's in humidity for too long. And all these people that work inside of quality and all the different food protection elements, they're the ones that are making sure that when it hits us at the store, that it's not poison, essentially, because there's so much that can go wrong. And This is the thing that's interesting about IoT now, because they're checking pressure and temperature, and there's all these other sensors that do all kinds of other things, density, how many blueberries are floating in the batter at one time in order to make the perfect muffin. Like, seriously, I've seen that. It's pretty crazy.
It's awesome.
The
answer is more.
The answer is 8 blueberries per muffin or something like that. It's or 7.5. I don't remember what it was exactly, but I just know it was this specific number. And the engineers who created that were so proud of it. But there was no cybersecurity around that, and it was connected to the internet because it had to go up to the dashboards. So it was just like, what? Like, cool tech, bro. Like, but like, what are we doing here? Like, I want my muffins to be safe. Like, and I know that sounds sad. Like, we need to have security, like a wrapper around our food, but we do. We need it hard. Like,
no, absolutely. So there was, I don't know if you guys remember, this must have been 5+ years ago, but there was an article on somebody went off and hacked and ransomwared a factory, one of the major producers of, hold your breath, beer. Okay.
Yeah.
And the cyber industry went freaking nuts. They're like, that's it. That's the red line. You've crossed it. We're coming for you now. Like 6 shooters loaded. The posse is coming. Don't mess with our beer. Like you can mess with anything. Just don't mess with the beer. And they had like screwed with the formula or something and shut down certain parts. And it's like, no, don't do this.
Well, a couple degrees off on the temperature alone, you'll turn it into actual alcohol, like pure alcohol that's poisonous. So that's
that's bad.
Fermentation and everything else. Same with the wine industry, right?
Yeah.
That's a critical infrastructure as well. As I've said to the Beer Isaka guys, I'm like, yeah, but beer is critical infrastructure. I mean, I know this because it's food. But the wine industry as a whole, as an example, to go down this rabbit hole, they don't have cybersecurity necessarily unless they're a big distributor, right? So like the California houses, a lot of them have some type of an in-house or a third party that will come in and do it because they have point of sale in their wineries. They sell online. There's a lot of PCI compliance that have to be put into that. Maybe depends, but also there's a lot of privacy to protect customers' data and things like that. But in these small guys, the winemaker does the cybersecurity. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I've actually had that conversation. And I'll say that again. The winemaker does cybersecurity. Why is the winemaker doing cybersecurity? Why wouldn't the owner do cybersecurity? Like I have questions why it's the winemaker. Like I
have so many questions, but I think where we are going to go eventually is, and we've got about 10, 15 minutes or so left. What is the role of the service provider, the MSP style in this? Because as we're talking, right, I get the distinct impression that most companies in the food service industry, unless they're one of the large conglomerates, right, I can't name them, but like Kellogg's comes to mind, and some of the other ones. I'm sure in fact, I know those folks have cybersecurity teams, sizable ones, but that's probably a small percentage, right? What do the rest of them rely on? And if it's the winemaker, or the corn producer or the packager, I'm going to be really afraid.
Nelson, do you want to answer this? Because you're a mid-sized company. This is a good one for you.
It scares me how you just both stare and laugh. That's
no,
just a little bit.
Just the fact that you said that was just like, oh, so why don't we just ask the sanitation guy to do it all? I mean, they probably would, but yeah.
Yeah, but MSSP are your best friends because again, we don't have the big budgets. I would love having in-house a SOC or having a dedicated IT specialist with a lot of certifications. I don't have it. So what do you do if you don't have the budget? MSSP. So that way you at least you pass the responsibility to the company. You save money because you don't need to invest in the tool just for you, and they have the experts and the time. So it's needed. Thanks for them. We depend on them a lot, but you need to do the due diligence because you don't want to open the gates of the kingdom to anyone. So it needs to be a trusted, reliable MSSP. And unfortunately, that stays here because I have seen very good ones that they are out of business. Why? Because I don't know, maybe there is a lot of competition. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I have seen good companies going out of business.
It's tough too because there's not a lot of security professionals or IT professionals in general who understand Nelson's world. So finding a company that's vetted properly to be able to say, I've worked in that industry, I understand it. And it goes beyond, oh yeah, I waited tables in college or I was a bartender. Like you do understand food to a degree because of that. Absolutely. You understand how rude people can be in that industry as well. However, it comes down to you need people that actually understand that mindset that we were talking about in the beginning of part 1 about how people need to think differently inside of these environments. It's not the same as the enterprise. You have to be able to be adaptive and fluid and creative, and you have to be a people person because people at these particular organizations are the greatest asset, full stop. They will police each other. They will put it as part of the culture. I'm a real advocate for inserting cybersecurity into food protection culture because it makes sense. It's like fire safety, right? Stop, drop, and roll. We all get that. Same concept. If you can keep doing that over and over again, that culture of safety, people won't put their drink on top of the weather IoT device in a field. People won't bring their laptop and leave it in a coffee shop, even when they're stressed out. People won't do things like that because they understand that what they do feeds a nation. And that's a serious, that's people take that very seriously and they're very personal and passionate about it. That's some of the reason why I love talking to this industry and working in it, is because everybody takes their job so seriously, but they have a good sense of humor about it.
Fair enough. Nelson?
Yes, I agree. As you mentioned it, one of the requirements, at least for us, is do you have other customers like us? Do you work with farmers? That's a huge point. And again, there are not a lot of them, so the list goes very narrow. Another requirement for us is, are you bilingual? Do your company speak Spanish? Can you help us in Spanish too?
Hmm.
So the list is narrower than that. So sometimes we are alone and we need to look outsourcing, we need to look outside.
That's interesting, that language requirement, because a good chunk of our, we don't talk about this as Americans enough, but a good chunk of our food production, particularly downstream, it doesn't speak our language, right? It's seasonal workers, farmers of all nations and
Exactly.
types. And you're right. Mexico, Central and South America play a huge portion, a huge role in our food production. Yeah, and I just thought about that. Like, instructions that are only in English are probably not very
Yeah.
useful.
No,
Yeah,
they're
the
not.
field or workforce is I'm maybe 90% people that speak only Spanish. I think
Right.
the robots speak Spanish too. Let me ask. Let me ask it.
I bet
The
they
next time.
do. I could see that. Behind that.
Hey, with a couple minutes left, I want to we'll end it on this note. What do you like? Give me pull out that crystal ball, take the dust off, shake it a little bit. No way, that's the magic 8 ball. Never mind. Just pull out the magic crystal ball, because I know what the 8 ball says. Where if we have this conversation again in, let's look out far, 5 years, what's going to be different? Kristin, I'm going to start with you because you're kind of over the top of things, and I'm going to ask Nelson a little bit more specifics. I want to give him a little more time to think.
Unfortunately, I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see the first $1 billion payoff for ransomware. It will come out of the food industry. I do think that we're going to see a catastrophe of loss of life because of a contamination that happened due to cybersecurity controls not protecting the way they should. I'm sorry to be like doomsday people, but this is real. Like, I do see this in the next 5 years, or sooner, is sad to say. I was interviewing with a gentleman who is very close to dealing with very personal aspects of the food industry. He lost a son to E. coli poisoning, and we were talking, and he was saying how many bodies need to hit the floor before we actually start caring about this, because this is how serious it's going to get. And I think as we innovate, as technology increases, I think we're not thinking about the peripheral of that. So what happens in the agriculture industry or any other industry around it could have an impact on food, of course, but also what we're doing in the food industry on automation and innovation, all this really cool stuff that makes us all go, yay. What does that mean for our food? Because again, the food's moving. The food is moving. It is all over the place. And how are we going to deal with that? I also think, and this is the last point, that privacy is going to be involved more in food production and agriculture, because as we start to finally tag the blueberries, if you will, and other data, it will be used for marketing purposes and consumer purposes. And I think that privacy is really going to have to get involved in this, because we're going to be really inundated by that data at some point, since we already are, but it's just going to get worse as we attach more and more technology to things and how it can use it to watch things, not just the weather and the crops and everything else, but our consumer value will be determined by what's in a field probably. And I realize that sounds super sci-fi, but we're here. It's fine.
Nelson, 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, in this industry, everything moves very, very slow. So there is not going to be a much change regarding protection. As Kristin said,
Fair enough.
we will see a lot of increase on ransomware, on a business being hacked. I mean, recently in California, there was a water plant that got hacked. They did something to the mix of water. They didn't poison anyone, but it serves you to prove like how dangerous it is, because I'm sure some people had a stomach ache because the mixture was a little more of this or that. So
Mhm.
this is dangerous and this is serious. I mean, if you mess with the food supply, you mess with the country. So we need to
Yeah.
change that mindset. I hope that more people support this and more people invest on cybersecurity. Unfortunately, it's going to be challenge. It's going to be very slow. So unfortunately for me, there is not going to be much change except being more hacked and more attacked if we don't change the mindset right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, gosh, guys.
Sorry for the downer at the end there, but we're just being real.
That's all right. Realism is important. But I'm going to say we've gotten this far without any major catastrophic incidents. Building all this awareness, stuff like this, what you guys are both doing at the grassroots level and in Kristin at kind of the industry level is so important because people like we have to make people listen. We can't wait for the big catastrophic event where 1 million people are poisoned, and there's critical loss of life, and then we're talking like, hey, we should have thought about this. Like, we need to think about this right now.
Yep.
Before anything bad happens, because I'd like to think that we can avoid these bad things before they get here. So, all right, on behalf of all of our listeners that got to experience you guys talking a lot of really scary but interesting points, and hopefully you had a good laugh. Nelson, thank you for joining. Kristin, thank you for joining and all the work you're doing. I will leave links to the ISAC that Nature posted, and Kristin, you've got some links. I know we'll post those. Feedback is always welcome. Check us out on the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast LinkedIn page, on Twitter, the podcast page itself. And if you run out of places to look, you can always just hit up me and James because we'll be happy to talk your ear off. Anyway, this is probably one of those episodes that I say this a lot, but I mean it every time, but I think this is one of those episodes where this is going to be easy to share this two-parter with friends that aren't necessarily cyber nerds. You can share this with everybody because really everybody should care about our food safety. And I think a lot of people don't think about that up front. So here's a great primer on food safety in 2 consumable parts with a little bit of fun. So thanks for listening, you guys. Kristin, thank you. Nelson, thank you. Best of luck, you guys, in the future. We're going to have you back. Hopefully not 5 years, maybe sooner. And we'll do this again. So for the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast, myself and James, thanks for listening, you guys. We'll catch you another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Cue that music.